Did he used to get your name right?
Yeah, he got me. Kerry Dixon. There weren't too many of them about, but no. I mean, I think it would have been interesting if Lee Dixon would have been in the squad then, because many people tell stories. It's a bit unfair about Bobby. I mean, the two Gary Stevens, the Tottenham and the Everton one, were both in the squad at the time, and there was a couple of times he clicked his fingers and pointed, and they both looked Stevens, and they're both sort of there, like so. But no, Bobby is a revered man and someone that gave me my England caps, and I could never have a bad word said about him. Wonderful career, and arguably one of the greatest England managers ever.
What do you remember about travelling with the squad to the 1986 World Cup?
It was wonderful. There was a chance that people were saying I wouldn't get picked because I had an injury. I picked up against Liverpool. I had 21 goals at the time in January, and I picked up an injury against Liverpool, and in the FA Cup, and I didn't play for about 2.5 months. Tore my stomach muscle. And I came back and I only got 2 goals after that, and everyone was saying, will Dixon be fit enough? And there was people were saying, don't play him, he ain't scoring. Because I did come back and I wasn't playing well, I wasn't as sharp as I was before, and the injury, I suppose, did inhibit me a little bit. But when you're trying to come back off injury, it takes time, but I didn't have time, and I think Don Howe came to watch me up at Manchester United, and I scored 2 goals that night. We won 2-1 away at United, and Bobby Robson told me in the sauna during the World Cup warm-up when we left, after I was eventually picked and the squad was named, he told me that when Don came back, that was the game that got me in the squad. And I thought it might have been, but papers speculated, but until you actually know, Bobby Robson said, yeah, he's back, and Don Howe gave him a reference, said, yeah, Dixon's fit enough.
Yeah.
Well, it was an amazing experience. I only got on for 6 minutes during the World Cup for Gary Lineker in the Poland game. Gary scored 3, but I suppose it was a choice of England had a poor first 2 games and they needed to beat Poland. And Lineker was guaranteed pretty much to start, but it was between me and Peter Beardsley who would replace Mark Haitley, who didn't do so well in the games previous. And Peter got the nod and I was on the bench. And luckily for England, Gary scored a hat-trick, but then the Beardsley and Lineker partnership went on to be very fruitful for England. Yeah. And for me, I was always going to be a sub behind them 2 when available and so on. And I travelled with England for about another year, got a game against Sweden when Bobby Robson said do it. Then and sadly England lost 1-0. I wasn't in good form because Chelsea was suffering at the time under John Hollins, and I got left out of the squad after that and never played for England again. But I had some great memories. And I'd have been proud if England could have won the World Cup, the hand of God. I saw Diego Maradona, who was the greatest player that ever lived for me, that I ever saw, play first hand. The fact we were cheated, we make a lot out of that. He was an amazing player, and hand of God was a situation where we were robbed, and England played well, but there's nothing wrong with his other goal, and who's to say how it would have gone on penalties? So. Yeah.
How did the players feel immediately after that game?
Peter Shilton knew immediately. He came out to punch the ball, and he was complaining. And from where we were watching the game, just behind the goal, up in the boxes, we knew there was something wrong, and some of the other players did, but some didn't. Yeah. And no one was really sure until we got back in the dressing room, and it was confirmed that was the way it was, and the TV was showing and things like that. But what will be will be. It was sad, but it was over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some felt a little bit cheated, quite rightly so, but it was done.
Yeah. Did you find it frustrating as a player, not only for England, but when it happened at Chelsea as well, when you was left on the bench?
Well, I was left on the bench more under the John Hollins era. It weren't too many times, I've got to be honest, for Chelsea, and for that part I was very lucky and privileged, and that I was pretty much regarded as a first choice player. Sometimes it happens. I think everyone at some stage spends time on the bench. That's inevitable, and it's not easy. Some players get used to it. Some players are happy to be part of the squad. I would never be happy to be part of the squad and just sit there and be on the bench every week. I'd want to play, and if that had been the case, I might have moved on. But I'm always up for the challenge, and if pretty much I'm not in the team. I'd fight for my place and give it as much as I could, but I wouldn't be happy being a sub for my life. I couldn't be one of these goalkeepers that, for example, that travel around being second choice goalkeeper, having a career, and no one ever knows who you are, or you've never achieved nothing. You've been a great servant to the club, but you're on a lot of money, but you never play. That wouldn't be for me.
When you sort of think about that, Kerry, are you not a fan of the very popular rotation system that seems to be in place now?
I'm a believer in rotation if rotation is necessary, but I don't believe in rotating players who are playing well. If I'd scored a hat-trick and there was another striker on the bench, well, I would accept, I expect to play. If he scores a hat-trick, you're not getting in the side. And if he scores 2, you're not getting in. And if he's playing well, you've got to try and get in front of the other striker and play alongside him. Yeah. If you're playing well, you stay in the side. You fight for the right to get in the team, then you play well. Coming in and out the side doesn't add to continuity, and it doesn't add to, like I've already said, getting to know your strike partner Speedy and your winger Pat Nevin, how they play, when to run, and it doesn't establish that half a yard that makes good teams into great sides. I think continuity. You look at some of the great sides of Liverpool or some of the great sides in the past, and there's a situation whereby they must have 5 or 6 of the main players who play every week. Dalglish always played, Keegan and Toshek, they always played when they were available, and you look at the players that played in the past, and you look at Chelsea's team in from the great sides from recent times. There was players that always played, and there was others that got rotated. Nothing wrong with rotating players but the cog or the main people in the side, for me, if they're playing well, must stay in the side.
Yeah. When you look back at your Chelsea career now, Kerry, what stands out as the highlights?
My Chelsea career was obviously the amount of goals that I scored, finishing where we did in the league on 2 occasions, the highest placings that Chelsea finished, I think 5th and 6th on the 2 highest times where I was there, top in the league on most occasions. But the highlight would be probably not while I was at Chelsea in terms of the fans. I mean, the highlight in terms of the fans was in '94 in the Cup semi-final at Wembley when I was actually playing for Luton, when Chelsea fans made their feelings known to me after the game, which became the most emotional day of my life when, in terms of football, when they sung my name after Chelsea beat Luton 2-0.
Yeah. And
it was an amazing feeling.
So,
something I'll never forget.
Yeah. How would you describe your relationship with the Chelsea fans?
I think it's very good. I think that they've always treated me well. They still treat me well everywhere I go. And like I say, I think it's a case of I had time for them, when I was a star, and they treat me as such now. Yeah. And and it's great that they never forget. And something that certain players will achieve and certain ones won't.
Yeah. How would you compare the Chelsea fans with other club supporters?
I'm sure other clubs have their heroes, their legends, and the people who they revere in the same way. That will be up to the fans and up to people. Some people like you, some people don't. Some people know you better, some people don't. But at the end of the day, have a bit of time and have a bit of respect for people, and you probably get the same back.
Yeah. Who did you used to room with at Chelsea?
I was at Chelsea for 9 years, and Joe McLaughlin to start with. Until he left, he was my room partner for about 4 or 5 years, and then it was David Lee, and then finally the last 3 was Dennis Wise.
Right. Any funny stories about Wisely?
Loads, but they can't go on print. They can't go on tape, I'm afraid. But there was a few. Character Dennis, he's a good friend of mine.
Yeah. Was you surprised to see him leave for Leeds and go up to Newcastle?
Yes, but I fully understood why to a degree. It was a job that Dennis could live more in London and commute. He's based around the M25, and he'd still do whatever he needed to do. But I think it's a job for Dennis that he sees where he's not in the spotlight and he wants a few years out of it. I think perhaps.
Yeah. How close was you to actually joining Arsenal?
Very close. Very close indeed. Ken Bates actually stopped it. I hadn't necessarily agreed, but it was very close. John Hollins told me that I could go. He'd agreed terms with West Ham and Arsenal. I spoke to John Lyle and George Graham. I pretty much got in my mind what I wanted. They'd pretty much agreed it, but I hadn't necessarily heard from Chelsea that Ken Bates and that was prepared to let me go, and I thought John Hines was going to do the deal. And I said to him, I'm going to wait and see. He said, what are you waiting for? What's your decision? I said, I'm not prepared to tell you at the moment. And he said, okay. I said, I want to speak to Batesy. And when he got a phone call next day, I got summoned to Bates's Beaconsfield farm, and he said, look, I don't know what's been going on. He was on holiday up the Amazon at the time. I think he probably did know what's going on, I don't know, but he claimed he never. And he said, you're not going, I want you to stay. I'm offering you a 2-year contract, and he's told me the manager will go soon. Keep that to yourself. And sure enough, that's what happened.
Yeah. When you look back at that episode now, are you pleased with the outcome?
Absolutely. That's the outcome I wanted. You know, I wanted to stay. That's why I'm prepared to wait. And I just wonder whether John Hines had the power, I don't know, to have actually pushed the thing through had Batesy not come back from his boat trip. But got to say, Ken Bates was always all right for me. People give him a lot of stick. But Chelsea wouldn't be what Chelsea is now without the 20 years that Ken Bates had at the helm. And, you know, he will always be an integral part of their history.
Yeah. How aware of Bobby Tamblin's record were you when you were scoring all the goals at Chelsea?
Well, I wasn't aware of it early on, but certainly as the goals ticked by, the 150s, the 100, the 150s, and you know, and then I started to look at, you know, I was in third place. Well, I'd gone past the third place, actually in second. It seemed a long way away, but as the seasons edged towards it, I was starting to think, and fans sort of automatically assumed that I would break it. And I've got to be honest, I thought I would as well.
Yeah.
But the last season at Chelsea, it wasn't a very productive season in terms of goals. Ian Porterfield had come back to the club as manager, and it wasn't a great season. We had some good players, but it wasn't a great season for me in terms of scoring goals. And I had a bit of a fallout with Batesy at the time. Porterfield was messing around with the side. He didn't know which team to pick and so on. And it was a strange time. But I was told during the summer that I wouldn't be playing for Chelsea again. They've accepted an offer from Southampton. They were going to sign 2 million, spending 2 million on strikers, and I wouldn't be in the team. I had 3.5 years left. I knew I wanted to break the Bobby Tamblin record, 9 short, and I thought, well, I'll get it next year. But being told you weren't going to be in the side and not going to be given the opportunity to break it, at the age of approaching 32, I decided that if they're not going to let me have the opportunity, I'll move. I want to continue playing, and I went. They then signed Robert Fleck and Mick Harford, and if I'd have known, I'd have stayed and fought for my place. But I didn't. I weren't to know, and that was it.
Yeah. How much would it have meant for you to break Bobby's record?
It would have meant everything. Bobby Tamblin's an absolute lovely man, and I've met him, you know, since, and an amazing guy. I think that you know, he did an amazing thing, scoring all them goals for Chelsea. I should have broke it, and I wish I had. And it's the biggest regret, footballing wise, of my life. But it never happened. I'm a realist. Good luck to Bobby. I don't think it'll ever be broken. If you look at what has to happen, you look at professional footballers' life, someone from the age of 20 to 30, which for 10 years have got to score 20 goals a season to get 200. Yeah. Which is why I gave Frank Lampard a standing ovation for a midfielder to get over 100 goals. And I'm saying that Frank Lampard could certainly run close if he signs a new 4-year deal at Chelsea, because he's a phenomenon for a midfield player scoring goals. He's arguably the greatest midfield player that I've seen in terms of scoring goals.
How did the Southampton experience go?